Imagine, miners discover an object that's 300 million years old. At the same time, in the Altai, they find a perfectly preserved mummy. It defies logic. Geologists record traces of an ancient explosion, and biologists have shown parasite eggs that are 20 million years old. The world of the past turned out to be much more complex and older than we thought. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video, and watch this one until the end. It will definitely surprise you. Hi, my friend, you're on the Kurtop channel. Silicon-based creatures, we're all used to thinking that life is built on carbon. It's carbon that became the foundation for DNA molecules, proteins, and all living things on Earth. But what if this is just one of the possibilities? Scientists have long been discussing the idea of silicon-based life. Silicon is also an element capable of forming strong chains and complex structures, but these structures would be different, more rigid, crystalline, and possibly not even resembling organic matter. There's a hypothesis that while carbon-based life breaks down under high temperature and pressure, silicon-based life could instead thrive. Imagine a world where living beings are translucent formations resembling stones, which grow, feed on minerals, and transmit information through vibrations. We would mistake such an organism for an ordinary stone and wouldn't even suspect that it's alive. What's especially troubling is that sometimes probe data shows anomalies that are hard to fit into carbon-based models. Scientists don't talk seriously about living crystals, but such theories do appear in classified reports. And if silicon-based life exists, it means one thing: we could have been walking among it for millions of years, not realizing that these stones are not just stones, but mysteries. Codex Gigas. The Codex Gigas, also known as the Devil's Bible, is an ancient manuscript full of mysteries. Created in the 13th century, it impresses with its size and content. Inside the book, you can find not only the texts of the Old and New Testaments, but also an image of the devil himself, which takes up an entire page. However, the most intriguing features are the astronomical maps, which appear unusually detailed for their time. This has given rise to many theories about the possible extraterrestrial origin of the knowledge used in creating the Codex. Some researchers believe that the manuscript may contain encrypted messages or knowledge passed down by extraterrestrial civilizations. Legend has it that the Codex Gigas was written by a monk in a single night with the help of the devil. What secrets does this mysterious manuscript hold? And is it possible that its pages contain encrypted keys to ancient knowledge that came from space? The Codex Gigas remains one of the most mysterious artifacts of antiquity, which we will definitely study someday. The meteorite that changed the course of Christianity. Abruzzo, Central Italy. About 100 kilometers from Rome, in the mountains, there is a round lake called Sorrente, about 140 meters in diameter. Geologists believe it is a crater formed by a meteorite impact. Radiocarbon dating of charred wood from the ejecta gives a date of around 312 AD, which is the time of Constantine's battle at the Milvian Bridge. The Swedish researcher Jens Ormeo suggested a simple explanation. A bright fireball and a mushroom-shaped dust cloud could have looked like a shining sign in the sky. Eusebius of Caesarea describes the vision of the cross and the light, after which Constantine ordered the symbol to be placed on the shields and won. Calculations show an energy of about 1 kiloton, comparable to a small nuclear warhead. The flash could be seen from very far away. In archaeology, there are indirect traces nearby. A village abandoned in the 4th century mass burials in catacombs, local legends about a sun star that split oaks. There is no direct evidence linking the meteorite to Constantine's vision. It's a hypothesis, but the coincidence of dates and the scale of visibility make it one of the most convincing. A natural event may have prompted the decision to legalize Christianity across the Roman Empire. One of the oldest books, the Codex Crosby-Shoyan, a rare manuscript that revolutionized the study of Christianity, was sold on June 11, 2024 at a Christie's auction in London for almost $3.9 million. This codex, created in the mid-4th century in Egypt, contains biblical and other early Christian texts, which makes it unique for the study of the history of Christianity. The Codex was found along with more than 20 other manuscripts near Dishna, Egypt, in 1952. These documents are known as the Bodmer Papyri, named after the Swiss collector Martin Bodmer. The Codex includes 5 early Christian texts in the Coptic language, among which are the earliest known texts of the Book of Jonah and the First Epistle of Peter. These texts are important for understanding early Christian literature and culture. The Codex is an early example of the transition from scroll to book. The Codex consists of 104 pages of papyrus, which were previously sewn together, but are now kept under protective plexiglass. This transitional period is important for the history of writing and books, as it demonstrates the evolution of writing technologies. The Codex was copied by the same scribe, probably an Egyptian monk in the 3rd century AD. He used a freshly cut reed as a pen. The preservation of the Codex is explained by the dry climate of Egypt, which allowed it to survive for more than 1,700 years. A wooden structure, an ancient wooden structure. Archaeologists from China made a remarkable discovery near the Kalambo waterfall in South Africa. They found traces of life from ancient representatives of the Homo genus, which are about 476,000 years old. The main discovery is fragments of a wooden structure, which indicates that these people not only used wood to make tools, but also for construction. The Kalambo Falls site itself is an archaeological treasure, where artifacts from various cultures have been found. But this recent discovery has turned our understanding of the way of life of ancient people upside down. The wooden structures dating back to the Middle Pleistocene era prove that people of that time could lead a settled lifestyle, engaging in construction and woodworking. Scientists have concluded that these structures were part of a dwelling or another large building. Perhaps they used them not only as shelter, but also for social or religious ceremonies. However, the question of who exactly created this archaeological architectural heritage remains open. It could have been Homo erectus or another representative of the genus Homo. Now, scientists have every reason to believe that ancient representatives of the genus Homo were much more advanced than we previously thought. The gears of mystery, the oldest computer on the planet. The Antikythera mechanism has always seemed like something out of an Indiana Jones movie. Bronze wheels, a handle, dials, an eclipse, an entire ancient national aeronautics and space administration in a box. But a recent 3D simulation has literally broken down the legend. Scientists recreated every gear tooth with micron-level precision and ran the virtual device through a full calendar cycle. The result was shocking. After 4 months of continuous operation, the gears started to catch. The load increased, and by the 6th month, the digital copy simply jammed. The error wasn't in the software. The model takes into account all casting defects, the pitch of the teeth, and the axle play measured on the actual artifact. If the numbers are correct, enthusiasts claimed that the mechanism in its original form could not reliably predict eclipses years in advance. The version is Desktop Planetarium. The toy suddenly looks more plausible. The owner would turn the handle, demonstrating the movement of the sun and the moon. It's enough for a wow effect for an elite audience, but not for the daily calculations of a priest astronomer. Another possibility is the bronze was underwater for 2,000 years. Corrosion ate away fractions of a millimeter and disrupted perfect synchronization. If that's the case, the original device really worked flawlessly, and what we see is just its rusted screenshot. To test the hypothesis, engineers will have to make a copy with perfectly even teeth and run the chronomarathon again. While debates are raging, one conclusion remains. The Antikythera mechanism is still a puzzle on the level of a Rubik's Cube. Only antiquity has added mystique. Either we underestimate ancient engineers, or we overestimate our own desire to see advanced space technology in every mystery. The longer I studied late Nazi projects, the more often I got the feeling that at some point they stopped operating within the bounds of reality, as if they believed in victory on Earth and began seeking an escape to another dimension. Literally, the projects related to aviation increasingly resembled attempts to break away from conventional physics. Disc-shaped craft, tests with electromagnetic fields, ideas of a gravity shield. But behind the engineering was another layer, an ideological one. They believed that humanity had lost contact with something greater, and that the Reich had to restore that contact. In 1945, strange terms began to appear in SS documents. Solar intelligence? Pure perception? Signal interception? Initially, I assumed these were just more pseudoscientific ideas, but then I realized it wasn't fringe individuals. It was people linked to the Ahnenerbe and Himmler himself. They were looking for a way to establish telepathic contact with someone or something they called a higher form of consciousness. One version claims it wasn't about gods, but about extraterrestrial intelligence that had allegedly contacted the Aryan race before. There are several theories. Some say it involved direct contact with extraterrestrials, while others believe it was an attempt to access the planet's memory. But the fact is that in the last years of the war, the Reich spent resources not on frontline tasks or the defense of Berlin, but on experiments with consciousness, hypnosis, radio frequencies, and anomalous zones. And then rumors appeared that some of them didn't go to Argentina or Antarctica, but somewhere higher. What exactly? They were developing not just ships, but carriers for leaving Earth's boundaries. I'm not convinced by such theories, but I can't completely dismiss them either. Because if you saw how many people after the war were searching not only for escaped officers, but also for bases in places where they couldn't possibly be, you would also start to wonder, what if they really didn't plan to stay? A metal rod. How can we explain this mysterious artifact? Inside a stone found in the Mazong Mountains of China, collector Jiling Wang discovered a metal rod with threads resembling a screw. But what's most strange is that solid rock formed around it, which suggests that the find could be millions of years up. Some have suggested that it's a meteorite with an alien artifact inside, while others believe it's an ancient man-made object that, for unknown reasons, ended up in the earth and turned into a fossil. Skeptics, on the other hand, believe that it's just a rare natural formation, and the screw is simply a fossilized marine organism. Interestingly, similar discoveries have been made worldwide. Is this coincidence or proof of an ancient unknown technology? For now, this artifact remains one of the most mysterious archaeological puzzles. The second Sphinx of Giza, Eastern Edge Plateau. Everyone knows the stone guardian near the Pyramid of Khafre, but in ancient texts, Egyptologist Bassam Ash-Sham found a strange duality, the Sphinx as the father of fear and the Sphinx as the mother of fear. And here is what is found between the front paws of the current Sphinx. There is the stele of Thutmose IV, and on it there are two creatures, not just one. A clay tablet found nearby tells about a statue that was struck by lightning, which broke its head. The lightning struck the metal crown. Lightning is attracted to metal. During recent ground-penetrating radar surveys, geophysicists from Cairo University examined the dunes south of the current Sphinx at a depth of about 4 meters. The instruments detected an elongated, dense outline almost 60 meters long, matching the size of the surviving monument's body. Without a head, the signature differs from typical limestone layers, which suggests it is a man-made object. There are several reasons the find hasn't been excavated. First, the risk of sand collapse and cracks in neighboring temple walls. Second, officials worry about disputes over altering the plateau's overall appearance. While excavation is prohibited, the potential Sphinx mother remains under the sand, but the complex essentially preserves half of the composition intended by its creators. The two sphinxes were carved from a single rock about 10,000 years ago, when the Sahara's climate was humid. Later, one of them lost its head due to a lightning strike. The destroyed statue was buried with sand. Superstitious priests did not dare to restore the bad omen even 1,000 years later. The fourth unearthed and restored the surviving father of fear, but stayed silent about the second. Since then, we've only seen half the original design, and as long as the mysterious shape lies beneath the sand, the history of Giza remains unfinished, like a missing page from the great book of Venera and Sparcenta. In December 2022, a Polish farmer near Kolobrzeg dug up a 12-centimeter figurine of a woman with accentuated hips and a narrow waist from his field. 3 years in the laboratory and the dating is ready. About 6,000 years the early Neolithic era. Electron microscope scans found traces of a flint cutter, and the clay matched the Parcenta River floodplain. Does this mean local landowners made the figurine, not traders? Why does that matter? Northern Poland was long considered the periphery of Venus culture. Classic Paleolithic and Neolithic goddesses were found in southern Europe. Now the Baltic region gets its own Mother Earth and moves the boundary of the fertile Colt zone hundreds of kilometers north. Altai mummy, Altai, Kurgans, Pazyryk. Thanks to the ice, the skin of a person about 2,500 years old has been preserved, and on it are almost faded tattoos. Scientists studied them again, examined the images under different lighting, analyzed the pigment, and reproduced the techniques on models. It turned out something unexpected. The tattoo was not done by just one hand. On the right hand, there are deer and big cats, drawn with the finest lines and accurate anatomy. This shows the skill of a master, while the simpler, uneven geometry on the left is likely an apprentice's work. This is the first convincing case where several artists are identified on one body. The pigment is regular soot. The tools are a single needle for outlining and a comb, several needles on a plank for quickly making dots and shading. Such a combination explains the depth and texture of the lines under a microscope. The incisions made during mummification sometimes cut through the drawings. This means they were not preserved for ritual purposes. Tattoos were a part of everyday life, a sign of status, group affiliation, or personal symbols. The lines on the skin reveal the structure of an Iron Age community. There are masters, there are apprentices, and there are simply complex body ornaments that were important during life, not after death. The Tunguska explosion happened earlier than we thought. In the north of Yakutia, in the area of the Verkhoyansk Range, a group of geologists discovered an anomalous zone where dozens of scorched stones and trees, all knocked down in one direction, were lying on the ground. At first glance, nothing unusual. Fires and landslides are common in these places, but analysis showed that the charring did not come from burning, but from a brief, very powerful heat impulse. Within a few days, the place was nicknamed Little Tunguska. The scale of destruction there, of course, can't be compared to the fall of the famous body in 1908, but the signs are surprisingly similar. The radial pattern of the melted taiga, microscopic beads of melted quartz, traces of rare metals like iridium and nickel, all of this is characteristic of cosmic impacts. Researchers are cautious. This could be from a meteorite that broke up in the atmosphere, with only the shock wave reaching Earth. Or maybe it's part of a vast belt of impacts connected to the same event as the Tunguska explosion. A direct link hasn't been proven yet, but there are similarities in chemical composition. The main mystery is the radiocarbon dating of the trees and soil. The catastrophe occurred not at the start of the 20th century, but about 1,000 years earlier. This suggests Tunguska-type explosions may have occurred in Siberia before, but went undocumented at the time. Today there is no crater at the site, only a scorched area and a forest that has grown over it. Scientists continue to take samples, but even if the explanation turns out to be simple, the fact remains that our planet remembers far more impacts than we are used to thinking. The mermaid from India. Few people have heard of the Chandraketu archaeological complex in India, which is located about 35 kilometers from Kolkata. Chandraketu was a thriving port city involved in international trade, where people lived from 400 before Christ to 1250 AD. Today, only the ruins of a 10th century brick Buddhist temple remain at this site. Interest in Chandraketu arose due to the numerous terracotta artifacts dating back to the Shunga period, that is, 200-100 before Christ. Most of them were stolen or taken abroad, and only a few fragments have been preserved in Indian museums. Although the site was discovered in 1906, the Archaeological Survey of India, under British control, did not conduct excavations here. Many of the stolen items are now in world museums such as the Metropolitan. 2 terracotta plaques depict a mermaid, which is a rather rare image for Indian culture. On one, the mermaid is swimming in a lake, holding something that looks like a mirror or a flower, while people on the shore look at her as if she is a wonder. The great chief arrived in a chariot to see this creature. In the other, the mermaid was caught in a net by fishermen. People wave at her, and she waves back at them without showing any fear. Looking at these reliefs, I wondered if they were depictions of ancient legends or real events that took place in Chandraketu 2,200 years ago. Perhaps mermaids were not a product of imagination, but real sea creatures in ancient times. Write in the comments below the video whether you believe in the existence of mermaids or something similar. After all, the depths of the seas and oceans are still unexplored for a reason. The mystery of the Giruft civilization. In Iran, in the ancient city of Giruft, archaeologists discovered unique artifacts. These findings, which are over 5,000 years old, are clay and stone items with images of unusual creatures and symbols. Special attention is drawn to figures with elongated heads and large eyes, which resemble descriptions of extraterrestrial beings. The images on the artifacts of the giraffe civilization are so unique and different from other known ancient cultures that some researchers have put forward the hypothesis of possible contact with extraterrestrial civilizations. These hypotheses are based on the idea that ancient artists might have depicted what they saw or heard about. The findings also include complex geometric patterns and symbols that have not yet been deciphered. This only adds to the mystery of this ancient culture. The giraffe civilization, thanks to its enigmatic artifacts, attracts the attention not only of archaeologists but also of enthusiasts of mysticism and the unexplained. The secret Project Bell, according to various sources, was an ultra-secret program aimed at creating technology ahead of its time. The bell was a bell-shaped device consisting of a metal shell and filled with a strange substance called red mercury. The tests were conducted in a remote laboratory in Poland, in the vicinity of Wrocław. The research related to this project covered a wide range of topics, from anti-gravity to time travel. Some theories claim that the Nazis tried to create a device that could change the outcome of the war by using advanced physical phenomena such as distortions of space and time. However, the results of the experiments remain unknown, and after the war, the traces of the bell disappeared. The secrecy surrounding the project gave rise to many rumors. Some believe that the device was evacuated to South America or fell into the hands of the Allies. The question of whether the bell actually existed still remains open. Legends about star people among Native Americans. In the cultures of many indigenous peoples of America, there are legends about star people who, according to these tales, came to Earth from space. These mythological stories embody the ancient encounters of the continent's indigenous people with beings from distant stars. Such stories are especially prominent in the culture of the Plateau tribes of North America. According to their beliefs, star people not only visited Earth, but also shared knowledge with the Native Americans, helping them adapt to life, teaching them farming, healing, and even spiritual practices. One of the legends tells how the star people descended to Earth on shining silver discs, attracting the attention of the Native Americans with their light and sound. These visitors were friendly and shared wisdom and knowledge with the tribe. There are also legends that some of the Native Americans went up to the sky with the star people and returned, enriched with new knowledge. Interestingly, these stories share common features with myths from other cultures around the world. However, while for most researchers these stories are merely myths born of human imagination and the need to understand the universe, others claim that they may serve as evidence of ancient encounters with extraterrestrial life. A skeleton with an intact brain. Imagine a giant mound covering 45 hectares, which looks like the north in aerial photographs. It's not called the heart of Western Anatolia for nothing. And now for the most interesting part. For the first time in the history of Turkish archaeology, scientists have discovered well-preserved remains of skin and also remains of a brain. Just imagine, brain remains that are already 3,700 years old. Discoveries of such antiquity are truly incredible. So who were these people? It was a young guy, about 15 to 18 years old, and a middle-aged man. Apparently, their house was set on fire during the Bronze Age, and they didn't have time to escape. It's unsettling to think that the fire actually helped preserve their remains so well. This amazing burial mound was the real capital of its region in ancient times. But around 1700 before Christ, it was completely destroyed as a result of an attack. And now the main question is, how is this possible? How could the remains of the brain and skin be preserved for such a long time, thanks to the extremely high temperatures of the fire? This is truly a unique and rare find. Evidence of extraterrestrial visitors. Now we come to one of the most controversial theories about the pyramids. There is an opinion that aliens helped build the pyramids in the 1960s and 70s of the last century. This assumption became popular thanks to Erich von Däniken's book, Chariots of the Gods. He said that extraterrestrial beings came to Earth a long time ago and helped build the magnificent pyramids. And why do we think so? First of all, the builders of the pyramids cut and installed the stone blocks with unusual precision. Some people believe that such work would have been impossible without futuristic technologies that could have been provided by aliens. Secondly, the pyramids seem to be arranged according to special astronomical patterns. For example, the sides of the Great Pyramid of Khufu align perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass. Some even suggest that this was done intentionally to serve as a beacon for incoming alien spacecraft. However, many scientists want to see evidence. They claim that there is no proof of aliens arriving on Earth, and everything in the pyramids can be explained by earthly technologies. The ancient Egyptians used giant ramps to move stone blocks to the top of the pyramid. It may sound primitive, but the effectiveness of this method is undeniable. At the moment, there is no evidence confirming the arrival of aliens. And although the pyramids remain some of the most amazing wonders of the world, most likely they were created solely by human hands and minds. Bassan's vase, Northern Italy, 15th century. At a wedding, a young bride is given a silver-carved vase as a gift. The night ends in murder. The bride dies with the vase in her hands and manages to curse the gift. After that, the vessel passes from one relative to another, and each new owner soon dies. The story repeats itself so many times that people begin to fear the object even more than any weapon. By the end of the 20th century, the vase was allegedly unearthed again, and inside was a rolled-up sheet with an inscription in English: "Beware, this vase brings death." The warning was useless. Like the archaeologist, everyone who touched the object died. Desperate, someone threw the vase out a window, almost hitting a police officer. The museum declined it, and its whereabouts became unknown. There is little evidence for this chain of events. Online, what we see is more of a legend than a verified museum artifact, but the legend has lived on for decades and continues to appear in collections of cursed objects. Some things become part of history not through archaeologists' study, but because storytellers remember them. Egypt and the swastika. The more I studied the archives about the Unnenerbe, the clearer it became. The Nazis didn't just want to find ancient artifacts, they needed to write themselves into a grand past, create a narrative portraying the Aryans as direct heirs of the oldest civilizations. Egypt held a special place in this system not because of the pyramids and mummies, but because of its symbols and rituals. They called the swastika the Sun Cross. For them, it was not just a symbol, it was a code. The swastika is indeed found in the cultures of India, Tibet, and China, and in Egypt at least as an indirect symbol. The movement of the sun, 4 directions of culture. They found confirmation of their ideas in this, sometimes far-fetched, sometimes quite convincing. Before the war, some researchers associated with the Unnenerbe were indeed in Egypt unofficially. They were interested in ancient books, burial rituals, beliefs about the afterlife, and how the Egyptians connected power, magic, and order. The Nazis saw this as a system, not a religion, but a mechanism of control, as if the ancients knew something that had been forgotten, and they came to restore it. I looked at photographs from those expeditions. People in SS uniforms standing by temples, stone bas-reliefs decorated with runes. It wasn't just imitation, it was an attempt to create their own new religion, not relying on symbols that inspire power. When Hitler talked about returning to the past, he didn't mean Prussia. He looked further back, into millennia, into civilizations that had disappeared but left a trace, and he wanted that trace to lead to them. Are these findings really 300 million years old? From time to time, miners find strange artifacts in coal seams that apparently were created by intelligent beings. This raises uncomfortable questions for science because the age of these layers is estimated at 300 million years. How could objects that were clearly made by hand end up there? After all, at that time the Earth was inhabited only by giant insects and the first reptiles, and there was no question of humans, dinosaurs, or even more so, advanced technologies. However, the discoveries continue to amaze. In 1912, an iron pot was extracted from a coal seam in Oklahoma, and in 1851, a vase made of zinc and silver was discovered in Massachusetts. With the rock, it was found in being 534 million years old. In Russia, a metal rod resembling a gear rack was found, made of aluminum with a mixture of magnesium, and its origin is even more mysterious. Aluminum was only discovered in 1850, but the coal in which it was found is over 300 million years old. Scientists found that the metal was impregnated with carbon, which confirms its incredible age. But if that's the case, who made it? Some believe that these discoveries are traces of a vanished civilization that existed long before us but was wiped from the face of the planet by a global cataclysm. Others suggest that the objects could have been left by aliens or even time travelers. Skeptics, in turn, are sure that these are hoaxes or mistakes in dating. There is also a theory that coal was formed not millions, but only a few thousand years ago under the influence of deep gases and pressure. If that's the case, then the artifacts may not be that ancient at all. Korolevsky Sapphire. Before you is a ring from the late 14th to early 15th century, from the time when the English crown passed from Richard II to Henry V. The solid blue crystal is carved from a single piece of sapphire. The craftsman did not set the stone in a frame, but turned the stone itself into a monolithic ring. Such work required not only a rare gemstone, but also mastery of diamond powder, the only abrasive capable of polishing corundum. In the Middle Ages, sapphire was considered the stone of justice. Kings and bishops wore it when making agreements. It was believed that the crystal would cause anyone who broke an oath to suffer from a fever. On the cutting platform, you can see a tiny step. Here, the jeweler shaved the surface so that the tool wouldn't slip. The ring weighs less than 10 grams, but in the 15th century, its price was equal to the cost of a good knight's armor. Most likely, it belonged to someone among the high-ranking vassals of the court. The documents consider the sapphire part of the Norilsk hoard, buried during the time of the Lollard unrest and unearthed 5 centuries later. A recipe from the grave. Czech scientists have recreated Celtic beer based on research of pollen from an ancient Celtic burial in Moravia. The beer has deep roots, with the first traces going back to the Middle East, appearing in breweries about 5,500 years ago. However, its full history still remains a mystery. Excavations carried out in 2021 open new horizons in understanding ancient cultures, revealing the lives and traditions of pre-Celtic peoples. Modern pollen analyses found at this site have revealed traces of millet and other grasses that were used by the Celts to make beer. Scientists suggest that some ingredients, such as clover, may have served as sweeteners for the drink, indicating complex taste preferences and technologies of ancient times. The beer created by Tari L has unique flavor qualities, different from modern varieties, highlighting the role of various herbs and spices in its production. The absence of hops is an interesting aspect of the beer's flavor profile, making it similar to medieval recipes. Beer, being one of the oldest beverages of humanity, continues to connect people across cultures and centuries. Researchers have solved it. The Voynich manuscript has been intriguing scientists and cryptographers for over 600 years. This document, filled with encrypted texts and unusual illustrations, gives rise to many hypotheses, from magical spells to obscene texts. But researchers from Macquarie University have concluded that the content of the manuscript is not only decent, but also contains information that, in the early 15th century, was not meant for everyone. Dr. Keegan Brewer, the lead author of the study, claims the manuscript is a medieval guide to gynecology, including information about sex, contraception, and the treatment of gynecological diseases. The encrypted nature of the text suggests that access to this information was deliberately restricted to a certain group of female readers, which is a vivid example of gender censorship. The manuscript contains numerous illustrations depicting plants, animals, and people, but researchers were particularly drawn to the drawings of naked women pointing to their genitals. These images clearly hint at the gynecological focus of the text. Women's secrets, as women's health was called, were strictly censored in the Middle Ages. Despite active study, the patriarchal culture of that era feared the female body and its functions, which was reflected in the medical texts of the time. One of the largest and most mysterious illustrations, known as the rosettes, may symbolize the commonly accepted views on sex and contraception of that time. According to the beliefs of that time, the uterus consisted of 7 or 4 chambers, and the vagina had 2 openings, possibly 9 circles. The illustrations symbolize these anatomical details. Thus, the Voynich manuscript may not just be a collection of meaningless symbols or a joke, as some have suggested, but an important historical document revealing approaches to women's health in medieval Europe. Giants from the Ice Age. In the Yorkshire Dales National Park, on the slopes of Ingleborough Hill, there is one of the most unusual geological formations in the UK, the Norber erratic boulders. These massive blocks of dark sandstone and shale rest on light limestone bases, creating the impression of unstable balance. The stones are about 12,000 to 17,000 years old. They were brought here by the last glacier that advanced from the north of England. When the ice retreated, the boulders were left in place, and the following millennia of erosion gradually washed away the surrounding limestone. Where the stone protected the surface from rain, small pedestals have been preserved, so it gives the impression that the boulders are floating above the ground or were placed there artificially. Today, more than 100 such stone blocks can be counted on the slope of Ingleborough. They differ in size and shape, but all demonstrate the same principle of formation, a combination of the power of ice and the work of time. Geologists consider the Norber erratics a valuable testament to the last glaciation and a rare example of natural balance that arose without human intervention. The site is included in the list of protected geological monuments of the United Kingdom and is considered one of the main natural attractions of northern England. For researchers, it is not just a collection of boulders, but an open archive of the region's climatic history, preserving traces of glacial processes that have transformed the landscape of Europe. A rare giant book is before you, one of 12 giant books from the 18th century written in Spanish. Its size is impressive, almost a meter in length. These books were created for religious ceremonies and contain detailed scripts of worship services, leather binding, wooden covers, pages made from tanned animal skin. All this made the book not only durable, but also a symbol of the church's grandeur. Such manuscripts were intended for use in temples, where clergy and the choir could read the text from afar, which is why the letters are so large. Today, this rarity is kept at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, where restoration scientists carefully study it, trying to preserve it in its original form. These books are a real window into the past, allowing us to see what liturgical texts look like and what the attitude toward writing was in the era of colonial Latin America. The pyramids we see today are far from how they looked when they were first built. Don't believe it? Let's dive into history. Ancient engineers used an astonishing 6.1 million tons of limestone to build the main pyramid of Giza, the largest and oldest of them all. It was constructed by order of Pharaoh Khufu. But what do you think it looked like before? No, it wasn't sandy brown. It was covered with a shiny layer of limestone. But unfortunately, over time, many of the facing stones were reused. This probably started during the reign of Tutankhamun and continued for many centuries. Add to that the earthquake of 1303 AD, which shook them up a bit. Nowadays, the pyramids still amaze us with their durability. For example, the Pyramid of Khafre has even preserved some of its original facing stones. It looks as if one peak is wedged into another. It's amazing. On top of the pyramids, so-called pyramidions were installed covered with electrum, a shiny mixture of gold and silver. Unfortunately, most of them have been lost over time, but some examples can still be seen in museums. Bloody waterfall. Antarctica is a continent of records and one of the strangest. There is a crimson stream flowing from the Taylor Glacier. The layer of ice here should be sterile, but the meltwater is colored a deep red. Until recently, scientists blamed iron for the rusty flow. It all seemed clear. However, a 2023 analysis showed something different. Nanospheres were found in the water, tiny particles smaller than viruses, with an iron core coated in calcium and aluminum. While under the ice, the color isn't visible, but once the water reaches the surface, the shell oxidizes instantly and the stream turns to liquid blood. The source is an ancient salt lake that was sealed off millions of years ago. Salt lowers the freezing point and at the same time releases heat during crystallization, so the water remains liquid even at 10. In this closed salty system, bacteria live that have been isolated since the time when modern ecosystems had not yet formed on Earth. They feed on sulfur compounds and survive without light or oxygen. This is a direct scenario for possible life under the ice of Europa or Enceladus. The bloodfalls are not a mystery and not caused by algae. This is a demonstration of how chemistry, microbes, and geology can work together to create an absolutely alien scene on our own planet. Traces of fire under megaliths, under many ancient megalithic structures. Archaeologists find charred layers, but these are not remnants of campfires. The temperature was too high for ordinary people to have created it. In some places, they are melted as if they were exposed to plasma or a powerful energy source. At Pumapunku in Tiwanaku, Bolivia, there are marks on the basalt slabs as if they were cut with a red-hot tool. In Egypt, melted edges of blocks are recorded in places where there should be neither fire nor volcanism. Scientists explain this as random natural processes, but the temperature clearly exceeded the level of any natural fire. There are too many coincidences, as if in ancient times energy was used that is comparable to modern plasma, cutting, or even powerful energy. Then megaliths stop being tombs or ritual structures. They become traces of work with technologies that people simply didn't have. 1. The Green Mummy. In one of the tombs of the Egyptian necropolis in Abydos, archaeologists came across a sarcophagus covered inside with a thin green coating. At first, they thought it was just traces of copper or mold, but analysis showed that it was actually a real mineral deposit of malachite. Over time, they soaked into the mummy's bandages and skin, giving the body a strange greenish tint. The burial is about 2,600 years old. Inside is a man, judging by the bones and attributes, a wealthy person but not a pharaoh. In the tomb, they found amulets, vessels with incense, and remnants of an oil mixture that covered the body before mummification. The mummy turned green after centuries due to the copper salts in the mixture. For the Egyptians, green was not just a decorative color, it was the color of rebirth, Osiris, vegetation, and eternal life. Therefore, even in this accidental chemical reaction, there is symbolism. The body truly became eternal, not metaphorically, but literally. Copper compounds could have entered the tomb from jewelry, vessels, or pigments used in painting, but the result itself looks so unusual that the mummy received the unofficial name Zelenaya, the mystery of the Dropa discs. In 1938, in a remote region of China, in the city of Bayankara Ula, archaeologists discovered an amazing artifact, the Dropa discs. These discs, made of granite, have a diameter of about 30 centimeters and a thickness of about 1 centimeter. They attracted the attention of scientists with their unusual appearance. Each disc contains central holes and carved spiral grooves, resembling tracks for playing sound. That is, they are similar to vinyl records and may possibly contain the sounds of ancient people, nature, or even something extraterrestrial. The most intriguing thing is that the grooves on the disc contain microscopic symbols resembling hieroglyphs. Researchers claim that these symbols may be a form of ancient writing encrypted in the spiral patterns. Translations conducted by some scientists suggest that the discs may tell the story of an ancient civilization known as the Dropa, which may have had contact with extraterrestrial beings. According to legend, the Dropa tribe arrived on Earth about 12,000 years ago from a distant star, but unfortunately, almost no artifacts from them have survived. The Dropa discs remain one of the most mysterious archaeological discoveries, raising many questions about possible contacts between ancient humans and extraterrestrials. Parasite eggs that are 200 million years old. Modern parasites, as we know, play a key role in ecosystems. However, paleontologists from Mahasaracham University in Thailand made a breakthrough in understanding their historical presence by studying fossilized excrement of ancient creatures, where they found ancient parasites, including roundworms of the ascarid type. This discovery followed a report about the revival of an ancient worm from the Siberian permafrost by Russian scientists. Working with coprolites about 200 million years old, scientists discovered structures corresponding to 5 types of parasites. Interest in these fossils arose thanks to local residents of Thailand, who considered them lucky charms because of their unusual shape. This is the first known example of finding parasites in a terrestrial vertebrate from the late Triassic period in Asia. It is also one of the few records of preserved ascarid eggs in coprolites of ancient animals. These parasites were found in excrement that apparently belonged to a phytosaur, or another crocodile-like reptile from the Triassic period. The discovery enhances our understanding of how parasites interacted with their hosts in ancient times. The oldest meteorite, meet ERG Chech 002. It's not just an ordinary meteorite, but a true great-grandfather from space. It's as old as 4.6 billion years. It was found in the Sahara Desert and became a record holder. It's the oldest volcanic rock on Earth. This is an andesitic chondrite, one of the first cosmic inhabitants. Scientists from Australia decided to uncover all its secrets, to understand how planets were formed and what was happening in the solar system at the dawn of its existence. But our old fellow had a surprise in store. The isotope aluminum-26 was the main source of heat in the early evolution of the solar system. In addition, specialists usually determine the age of meteorites by its amount, but it turned out that at the beginning of the solar system's existence, this aluminum was distributed unevenly, so the old methods of determining age are no longer that accurate. This discovery has turned scientists' understanding upside down, and now a new approach is needed to determine the age of a cosmic object. The oldest tunic from Egypt is 4,500 years old and is now in the Cairo Museum. It is one of the most valuable exhibits of ancient Egyptian art. This amazing piece of clothing has been well preserved to this day, allowing us to glimpse the everyday life and fashion of ancient Egypt. The tunic is made of linen, a popular material at that time, which was cool and affordable. Its design is simple but elegant, with narrow sleeves and a straight cut that emphasize the status and level of sophistication of its owner. It's interesting to note that despite its age, the design of the tunic is still relevant today. It is believed that such tunics were worn by high-ranking individuals or priests. Clothing of this kind emphasized the owner's status in society. Members of the upper classes of Egyptian society often decorated their clothing with embroidery or gold thread to stand out among others. We hope that our journey through history was as fascinating for you as it was for me. Leave your kind comments under the video and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Goodbye, everyone.